Who is Luke Belmar?
Well, Luke Belmar is an immigrant from Argentina. Went to the United States at the age of 16 with $200 in a suitcase. With a lot of ambitions, a lot of goals, a lot of dreams, but with a very clear purpose and a very clear mission to make it out, right? To make it out of this thing that we call the system. And as I drive through Amsterdam coming here, you notice the system, it's very prevalent, you know, how people live, how people move. And I always knew deep down that that wasn't what I wanted for my life. I come from a small town, 12 to 15,000 people in the outskirts of Buenos Aires. I don't know how much Dutch people like Argentine since we keep schooling your guys' ass in football every World Cup. But it's good. At the age of 16, moved to the United States with $200 in a suitcase. Went from pressure washing basketball courts, cleaning toilets, flipping wings at a Buffalo Wild Wings, sleeping in my car for a time being. It was about like 4 or 5 months, to eventually getting exposed to Bitcoin. I heard of Bitcoin in 2015 for the first time. And when I often tell this story, people are like, well, Luke got lucky. I'm like, I don't think I got lucky. I was exposed to information, but that doesn't mean that you need to necessarily act on that information. I remember watching a documentary on Netflix. I forget exactly what the name, I think it's called Banking on Bitcoin. And the gentleman, they would actually go out on the streets, I think it was Wall Street, and would tell people, hey, would you have a Bitcoin or would you take this $5 bill? And everybody was like, well, I'll take the $5 bill because it's real and I can see it and I can touch it. So a lot of people were exposed to the opportunity, but not everybody capitalized on the opportunity. I remember being in a situation whereby in the United States, I don't know how it works in the Netherlands, but if you wait tables or if you work in a restaurant, you get your cash tips. So in the United States, it's a tip system. But every day the restaurant gives you those tips. That is your payday basically. So I would get that cash tip. I would drive to the ATM and I would deposit that money. I had a 1998 Buick. It was an old Buick. It was like a mafia car. I fucking love that car. I crashed it, but eventually I had to upgrade. But it was a nice vehicle nonetheless. I remember depositing the money. It was a Wells Fargo bank account. And since it's a cash deposit, you see the money instantly displayed in your bank account. So I would instantly get on my computer and I would go to an exchange called Bitstamp. And Bitstamp was an OG exchange. You know, it doesn't have a lot of liquidity or popularity right now, but back in the day, you could use your debit card to actually purchase Bitcoin on that exchange. So I would every single day use 50% of my money that I would make that day to buy Bitcoin. At that time, it was a couple $100, $500, $600. This was the end of like 2015, 2016. So pre the bull run of 2017. 2016, I got exposed to e-commerce through a couple of buddies, through the internet, which it was pre-popularity, if you may call it. It was
before the hype,
pre-guru season,
YouTube all over dropshipping.
Correct.
This, that, and all
so there wasn't a lot of information, there wasn't a lot of infrastructure, and people on that side will be like, well, you got lucky about that as well. You got access to e-commerce when it was fairly easy. And once again, what I say to that is, just because it was accessible, it doesn't mean it was easy. Why? Because the infrastructure wasn't set in place whereby fulfillment centers were easy to access, payment processing, it screwed any sort of e-commerce or dropshipping because it was seen as high risk. So there was a lot of uphill battles, but there are different uphill battles. Today, the uphill battles are, you have, you know, your advertisers, like your advertising platforms like Meta or Snapchat. They don't like dropshippers because they have a bad reputation. They're high risk. So you get a lot of bans on that side. You still have issues with payment processing. And then you have competition when it comes to the barrier of entry, because the barrier of entry is quite easy. All you have to do is open up a store with Shopify. Back in the day, Shopify didn't have all these crazy plugins. I remember the App Store was very new on Shopify. And I remember I would have to learn the basics of coding to like code in my own, the own size of my checkout button, the color of my checkout button. It's pretty OG. Did quite well in e-commerce. I rode the wave of crypto in 2017, up and down. I wrote it down. I didn't make a ton of money. Why? Because I didn't understand market cycles. But I was like, you know what? I think I did 140 to 160x on my portfolio. I forget, but I lost it all, right? I lost it all. And a very simple number to evaluate whether that's true or not is look at Cardano, right? Cardano went from half a penny to $1.60. I rode that entire thing. It was like 2 to 3 weeks. Same thing with Tron. Tron, I think, went from like a penny to like 30 cents or something like that. And then XRP went from 13 cents all the way to $3.50. So I rode all of those tokens. I remember buying Bitcoin again. Still, I think I have some videos of it buying Bitcoin when it crashed at like $4,000. And then a couple weeks later, it was up at 15. So it was a great season. But the issue was I didn't understand market cycles. I was left holding the bag because everybody was, back in the day in 2017, it wasn't diamond hands like like in 2020, that chant. It was the hodl, right?
Yeah.
The hold on for dear life. And I held on for dear life and I got fucked. So I sat down there. I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? What I did right was I allocated my money in an investment vehicle, or what a lot of people like to call a high risk investment vehicle. And it played out. Why? Because money moves from different markets at different times. And Bitcoin has its cycles. After the Bitcoin halving, 1.5 years later, the market tends to have a really good season. So I was like, it's going to happen again. And it did. But this time I was prepared. And in 2020, after doing $16 million in e-commerce, did quite well there, had some money already saved up. I put all of my money into crypto except 10,000 bucks. Now, my entire thesis from that, it's not that I'm a genius, but I was connected with really good people. I was in the DeFi boom of 2019, so I saw Uniswap do extremely well. I was like, there's something interesting with DeFi. This was pre-YouTube videos of DeFi and everybody telling you how to open up a MetaMask account. It wasn't very popular, but that which is not popular is often a good idea. And the reason it's a good idea is because you don't have the normies and the average individual as a part of the mix. When the average individual is in the mix, it's usually the end of the season. When the taxi driver is talking about crypto, when your grandmother's talking about crypto, who else is left to buy? Truly, because those are usually the most uneducated, most uninformed, usually the people that are getting the information the last. The hedge funds are positioned, the market makers are positioned, the venture capitalists are positioned. Smart money's already in the game. And then what they do is very simple. They'll go to CNBC, they'll go to Fox News, they'll go to Forbes, and they'll pay the journalists to write articles on their behalf to do what? Increase eyeballs, because the newbies, they read these things. And then the information gets dispersed, gets disseminated. That information then leads to what? Liquidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the liquidity is where the smart people get out. They get out on the liquidity of the noobs. So in 2020, I think it was March of 2020, I remember using an exchange. It was Kraken and Binance before they were cracking down super heavy on it. And I had my orders already placed. So I had orders placed for Ethereum sub $100. I had Cardano at half a penny, XRP at 13 cents again. And it was the COVID crash. It was the big black swan event, and all of these tokens and all of these orders got filled, right? So I remember I was playing Call of Duty and I see my phone going off, like the little vibration thing, and you see the notifications, all this shit's getting filled. I'm like, oh fuck. At that time, I was kind of scared too, in the sense of, okay, is this actually going to zero? Because mind you, bro, Bitcoin went from 20,000 all the way to 3,500. That was scary, right? But it's usually in the fear that you have to buy into it, and it's in the fear of missing out. You have to sell. And the markets are quite psychological. And when you understand that the psychology is actually manipulated by people, you can in some way, shape, or form understand the cycle. Now, by no means am I perfect, but it worked out pretty well. I remember being on Clubhouse, it was, I think 2020, and that's when the app was really popular and popping. And CZ from Binance hopped on there, and he was giving a kind of like a Clubhouse meeting with other crypto people. I tuned in, and I got the opportunity to ask him a question, because I remember buying BNB in 2017 for $2. So the BNB token, which went to $600+, I was one of the first people that was actually buying BNB for $2 when the exchange was extremely new. I was a big fan of Binance. I still am. I think they're fucking dope. And that's no advice to put your money there, because you never know how exchanges are. But I was a big fan of it. They've done a lot of good for the space and helping it grow. But I said, okay, BNB is correlated to what? The exchange. So there needs to be more growth factors and more kind of pull to the fire to keep the engines running. So at that point, I asked CZ, hey, Uniswap has a competitor. They need a competitor. They're on the Ethereum chain. And I just saw that you launched the Binance Smart Chain, extremely new. There was no YouTube videos on it. I think when I went to type on YouTube the Binance Smart Chain, there was one guy talking about it from India and then one guy from China. There was like 2 or 3 videos. So it was super small, right? Yeah. It was had just gotten started, just launched. And then there was an old guy, some European guy, that made a video about it on how to like connect it with your MetaMask wallet. Because you look at MetaMask, the default is Ethereum, and you have to increase different chains. You have to do this whole like nonsense, right? So he said, well, we're trying to compete because the Binance Smart Chain is going to increase the demand for what? For BNB, which is the native token of the platform, therefore driving up the price. Most of the employees, most of CZ's wealth is attached to the BNB token. This is just how it works. So to increase demand, you need to create demand. So he was like, yeah, well, there's other DeFi projects, one of them being PancakeSwap. And I'm like, well, what do you know about PancakeSwap? And he stuttered a little bit. And then he was like, well, I don't know. I think they're a team from Turkey. And he started giving me information. I'm like, well, if you don't know this anonymous team, how is it that you know where they're they're from, you know how much, like how they're doing, you know that they're safe, that they're well put together team, that they're professionals, and they are. These guys absolutely crushed it. So I went back and I was like, dude, like maybe I shouldn't be betting on projects. Maybe I should be betting on people. And I bet on CZ. So I purchased, at that time, Pancake Swap was $25 million market cap, very small. I purchased 1% of the supply for $250,000. And from 25 million, it went up to a $2.6 billion market cap. I sold, I think, at about $36. But my selling point was one of the co-founders of FaZe Clan, the gaming org. He texted me and he said, hey, should I buy SafeMoon? And this was the week that SafeMoon had migrated from the Ethereum chain to the Binance Smart chain. I said, I'm out. Because this guy, he's a gamer. He's not a crypto guy.
Yeah.
And that's during the shitcoin season. You guys remember when people were creating tokens out of thin air?
The ding doink coin and all the bullshit. Yes,
so I was like, okay, this is the end, because people are just making shit up. At that point, I remember sitting in Mexico, $36, cashed out. And it went up to, I think, $42, $43. I felt like I'd missed out. But thankfully, I rode that wave pretty well. I did quite well with that investment, made some good money. And the reason I got into crypto was, in fact, I had a buddy come and visit me at the time when I was making still money with e-commerce. And we went to a restaurant, well, a fast food restaurant at the time. I don't endorse seed oils anymore. But it was called Chipotle. I don't know, it's like a Mexican fast food place. And the bowls there are like $12. So I'm here with this crypto multimillionaire who's made a fuck ton of money with crypto. And he's like, hey, Luke, like, he like whispers in my ear, he's like, hey, can you pay for my lunch? What do you mean? I thought you were like rich. I thought you were inviting me to lunch. You know what I mean? And he's like, no, well, I don't have any money. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have any money? He's like, yeah, all my money's in crypto. And I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like, this guy knows something that I don't. This guy like understands the game. This guy plays well. So I went back home, put all my money in crypto, and it worked out. Cashed out of Bitcoin at 55,000, cashed out of Ethereum at 2,950 or something quite high, and it worked.